Good evening. I'd like to welcome you all to the Selectmen's meeting for the town of Hingham for Thursday, October 3rd. We have a rather busy agenda this evening. Some minutes to approve. We'll have a public hearing on the request of the Hingham Sewer Commission to install and maintain a pipe. A public hearing on a request from National Grid to install some gas lines on Button Cove Road. We have a request for change in operating hours from Plaza Azteca, which I saw had an open sign on it. And then we will have the continuing discussion of the sewer policy and the north, particularly focused on the North Street and the sewer and Cottage Street projects. We'll have Tim White to come in and talk to us about the Hingham Affordable Housing Technical Services issues that some of you may have heard about. And then I think if we're on time at about 7:40, we'll begin the discussion on an issue that I know has brought many of you here, and that's the FEMA flood map discussion. And I'll have some comments to set that up when we get to it. So, with that being the agenda for today, you'll have to forgive me, I just came back from an island, and I'm still on the island up here. So if I slow down, my colleagues will
give me a nudge.
Give me a nudge, I'm sure. Okay. Any comments on the minutes for September 5th and September 17th?
Nope.
If not,
I'll move to approve the minutes dated 5 September and 17 September 2013.
Second.
any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Fine. That's okay. That's okay. This isn't church, so that's okay. Ted, who is going to lead us on the Hingham Sewer discussion policy on Alden? Is that?
The request for the public hearing, we're going to have Steve Dempsey come on up.
Hi, Steve. How are you?
The Sewer Department. Welcome.
The subject has to do with the installation and maintenance of an 80-foot pipe on Alden Road. So, Steve, you can introduce yourself to the public at home.
I'm Stephen Dempsey. I'm the Hingham Sewer Supervisor. And what we want to do is the Mackenzies at number 5 Alden Road have got, excuse me, have got a failed septic system, and their property is bedrock ridden, and the best solution would be to bring the sewer up Alden Road. They fall within the 200-foot border of the North Sewer District, and it would just be a matter of bringing that up. They will take care of the cost, and then we will maintain the sewer once it's installed.
And is this an emergent issue, or?
Well, we spoke with the Board of Health, and Bruce Capman will not grant a Title V permit if sewer is available, so
That's an emergent
this
issue.
came to us that way. The Board of Commissioners has already approved it, so here we are.
Okay. Irma?
When are you going to do it?
Well, I've got to have a pre-construction meeting with Harry, perhaps as soon as tomorrow, and then the work can commence. They're all ready to go.
Excellent.
Paul?
No questions.
Okay. Any comments from the public? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
All right.
Irma, if you would.
I move to approve the petition of the Hingham Sewer Commission to install and maintain approximately 80 feet, more or less, of 3-inch sewer main in Alden Road. This extension is for the purpose of connecting number 5 Alden Road to the existing sewer system.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks.
The next item on the agenda is a request from National Grid to install some gas line on Button Cove Road. So I'll invite the two parties.
Good evening. My name is Dennis Regan, and I'm the permit representative from National Grid. And tonight, National Grid hereby respectfully request your consent to install and maintain approximately 590 feet, more or less, of 2-inch gas main in Button Cove Road, Hingham. from the existing 12-inch gas main in Summer Street northerly to house number 5 to serve houses 2, 4, 5, and house number 12, Martins Lane, with an easement from house number 5.
Okay. Harry, any comments?
No comments, there shouldn't be any issues with the installation of that main in the road. The sooner the better.
Excuse me, I should have introduced, that's Harry Sylvester, is the highway superintendent for the town. Any questions from my colleagues?
One, since this is close to our favorite road, Summer Street, will you be cutting into Summer Street, to Summer Street at all?
They'll be cutting in a 5x4 hole to connect to the 12-inch main, and the trench will be cut 15 inches in width for the length of the Button Cove Road installation.
Are you going to do this, like, soon?
Well, it has to be done pretty soon because there's
Winter
the
coming.
moratorium coming, and so I believe this is going to commence pretty soon. I don't have an exact date for you.
Okay.
But you won't be much into Summer Street, I think that's,
No,
That's-
I don't believe so.
okay.
That was the concern, because that, we have friends on Buttonwood Cove, and that's very close to the Rotary.
Yeah, this main's about, it's about 12 feet off the brick wall on Summer Street.
Okay,
Good.
okay. Paul?
12 feet off the brick wall. How, is it in the lane of travel? The hole that you're going to be cutting?
I'm not sure if it's in the land travel.
Well, we have a plan here. Is this,
I have a plan.
is this,
It looks like it is in the lane of travel.
I mean,
It appears to be in the lane of travel, the nearest, like the lane nearest, the northbound lane nearest to Button Cove Road. That's all the state layout in Summer Street, that's why Summer Street wasn't really considered part of the grant, it's just where it's connected.
do you need to get permission from the state to cut into the state road?
We usually have to get a state permit.
Have you got that already?
I don't know.
What's the age of Button Cove Road?
What's the age?
Yeah. When was it last paid? Any idea, Harry?
When it was accepted for, as a town road,
When?
it goes back in the 70s.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
Yeah, I've already, viewed the area, and the pavement's well worn.
what's the condition of the excavation site on Summer Street? I mean, I know there's some compaction issues around those curves. I'm just curious as to whether we're going to add to that.
As far as the construction goes, I mean, once they're in and out of there, I mean, there shouldn't be any detriment to the pavement service, but while the work's being done, I'm sure they'll have ample police protection out there. One lane will absolutely be closed, and then,
Okay. How long will the work take?
It looks like probably about a week. Our crew's doing anywhere from 80 to 160 feet a day of installation of the main.
then you're talking about 3 or 4 more days of the services.
But they'll be out of the Summer Street area as soon as they do the hookup there,
I
right?
would think the Summer Street connection would take more than, 1 day at best.
Okay.
They generally pay, up to grade that night, so.
And Harry, you don't have any concerns about this, right? Other than just, it's in a nasty area for Summer Street.
On Summer Street, yeah, but I'm sure MassDOT, who has responsibility with it, is going to eye it very carefully when the work is
And Dennis, if you get a chance, if you go down there, I think you'll understand. It comes into a roundabout, and it's one of our most accident-prone areas. Is that a nice way to say it?
It's high frequency.
High frequency.
Any
Yeah.
steel plates on Summer Street?
Oh, there'll still be steel plates, always have steel plates at the job, because if anything is going to be open during the day and people have to get in or out, there's steel plates so they can drive them over. We always have them on site.
The steel plates regarding Summer Street would be covered under the permit issued by MassDOT.
Okay.
Do you want to give this to Betty? Added something for, if Paul's going to do the,
Yeah. Okay, any questions from the public? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Okay, I'll move to approve the petition of National Grid to install and maintain approximately 590 feet, more or less, of 2-inch gas main in Button Cove Road. This gas main will originate from the intersection with Summer Street and continue under the paved surface of Button Cove Road for the entire length to completion at house number 5, subject to the conditions of the DPW outlined in Mr. Sylvester's letter of 11 September.
second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Harry.
Thank you.
We have a hearing
Thank you.
on a change of operating hours for the Plaza Azteca restaurant on Route 53. You could introduce yourself to the...
Yeah, my name is Ibaldo Melendez, and I'm here to request the increase our hours in the restaurant, in the liquor license also.
My name is Mark Richard. I am Vice President of Operations for Azteca Restaurant Company. On the sideline, I'm also from the South Shore, so I'm very familiar with the area, ironically. And, participating in this opening and what have you.
Well, I know it's open. I
Yeah.
happened to pass that. What's the change in operating hours that you're looking for?
Yeah, we requested a standard 1 o'clock, 1 a.m. closing, 7 days. Our anticipation is not to stay open that late for 7 days, but it's good to have the authority of the license,
Just for the special events, like at the games and everything.
Sometimes we have, we're kind of fortunate to have 4 sporting events going on right now, and we have a West Coast game sometimes, it goes to, I think we all understand, 12:30. So it's good to be able to have that, but like nights like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, could be closing probably around midnight. So we'd elect to have shorter hours, but we just like the opportunity.
The flexibility.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
right, yeah, that's it right there.
Okay, and for the benefit of the folks at home, could you tell us what are your current hours of operation?
Yeah, our current hours of operation are 9:30 PM on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 10 PM, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 11 PM. And that's rather restrictive for us.
Okay. Mr. Healy?
You have an operation in Methuen?
Yes.
Does the town or city of Methuen require a police detail for any of your hours of operation?
No, they don't. They don't.
Just a correction, I think. I heard you say you wanted till 1 a.m. every day of the week, but your application says Thursday through Saturday till 1 a.m. and Sunday through Wednesday till 12.
The corporate vote also indicates
Yes.
till 12.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry,
Which would speak to what you just said about,
Yeah,
more
it-
likely the
yeah,
times will be
it-
Thursday.
It's similar, we just wanted, I wasn't aware of the,
Right here.
okay. I'm sorry for the inconvenience.
So I just want to make sure that we're talking about the same times.
Just for the folks watching and the people in the audience, there was a corporate vote by the Plaza Azteca Corporation Board that defined the hours, and those are the hours we'll be voting on.
I agree with those hours.
Yeah, that's fine. That's good.
I agree with those hours.
Any questions from the public? Any concerns? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve the change in operating hours for Plaza Azteca Hingham Incorporated, doing business as Plaza Azteca Mexican Restaurant.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Come on down.
Okay, Mr. Sylvester. The other Mr. Sylvester.
Double trouble.
Okay. And, Steve gets to come back. That's,
Now you see your sewer team here. Okay.
And a very good team it is.
just for the benefit of those at home, we have been having, this is not normally under the jurisdiction of the Board of Selectmen, but the folks in downtown have been particularly concerned about an odor that we've been holding hearings on here to address a number of steps that have been undertaken by the sewer department to correct it. And we have agreed that once a month, we'll come on back and just make sure we're moving in the right direction. So, Randy, if you would be so kind to give us an update since the last time?
Sure. Basically, I'm here to update you on a couple of things. One is the North Street situation, Ship and Cottage Street sewer main extension, and the sewer policy discussions that were held. I made bullet points here, and I know you want to make it quick, so I'm just going to start right in. North Street, no odor complaints have been received since July. Chemical feed system delivering the bioxide is working as planned. And odor control devices were installed on the vent pipes of the houses in the area and are working. The downtown area has been cleaned and videoed, all the sewer mains. North Street area odors, where the odors have occurred, also was videoed again. We did find some grease coming from the laterals of the restaurants in that area, but since that videoing, new grease traps have been installed in the restaurants and inspected by the Board of Health and the Sewer Department. So that issue of the restaurants were taken care of. As a result of these actions, there have been no odor complaints from that area. And lastly, I just wanted to know, because this was a question at the last meeting, I've instituted a policy for the sewer department to continue these practices, which I'll bring before the sewer commission to approve at the next meeting.
Okay, and then we'll be informed when that happens.
Yes.
So what Randy's doing is taking this from an engineering document 6, 7, 8 years ago that detailed what should be done to a formal department policy with procedures that would survive, hopefully, both you guys if you're fortunate enough to retire someday.
Yes.
That's not an implied threat.
It's a prayer that you wait as long as possible.
Okay, Irma?
I'm good with that. Thank you for the North Street. And so are the 3 restaurants, I guess it was only 2, they now have functional grease traps that meet our standards?
Yes.
I was in there this week to inspect, and it was a long time coming, but we got it done. And so they're up and running and they're compliant.
Excellent. I'm good.
Does that mean that all businesses that are required by law to have grease traps in that area or town actually have grease traps?
Susan Rowe and I have been going through and inspecting anywhere from 3 to 5 establishments per week. The first round is somewhat of a meet and greet and let them know what we expect. We're going to give a PowerPoint presentation next month, and we're going to invite everyone, all the establishments and the haulers to come in, and we're going to tell them what we expect, explain the regulation, and have a question and answer session after that. Then we're going to continue to go back, ensure that they're complying with the regulation, and the Board of Health is going to enforce. We're going to get everybody doing the right thing. It's been a long time that it's just been let go.
This is all the establishments in town, not just North Street?
There's roughly 50, we found a few more, there's roughly 50 that are on sewer that fall under the fog regulation.
So all of those. There are restaurants that might not.
Correct.
In
That's
different
correct.
areas. Correct.
50's a lot. You all have done a great job, you and Susan.
Thank you.
Paul?
Does that mean that all of the businesses that are required by law to have grease traps on the North Street area have them? I just want to be clear. I appreciate the explanation, but...
Yes, what we found is they all have them. Some need to be upgraded.
Okay. And that's happening?
That's happening. We've actually upgraded about 9 so far in just a couple of months, really, time. And although it's, we're making a lot of progress, it's a big job, and we're going to get it done as soon as we can. We're going to be vigilant with that.
Do you have an estimate as to when that'll happen? When they'll all be done?
Well, I think Randy and I have talked about a 12-month period to get this thing, get a baseline in and get everybody compliant, and I think that's reasonable.
Okay, is there anybody from the North Street area in the audience this evening? Because that's the true test. Okay. All right, how about Shippen Cottage?
Shippen Cottage. Shippen Cottage Street was advertised for bid on September 10th. 5 companies bid on the project, and the bids were opened on the September 26th. At present, Weston & Sampson, the engineer is conducting a reference and qualification checks of the contractors. Once the lowest and most responsible contractor has been chosen, the commission will enter into a contract with them. We have the easements in hand that are needed, and they need to be signed by the Sewer Commission and recorded at the Registry of Deeds, which they will probably, they're planning to sign them on Tuesday at the next meeting. Also, I believe a grant location for sewer main is needed from the Selectmen, and this will all have to be done before we start. Hopefully, the contractor can break ground in a few weeks.
Okay, so you'll be back?
Someone will be back, yes, probably me and Steve.
No, editorial you.
Yes.
So this will be done before snow flies, theoretically?
Hopefully, yes.
And of course, it assumes that the situation on North Street continues to go as it has.
Yes.
That's okay. All right, any questions from the public? Okay, and the last issue you had was policy?
Policy. Just a couple of notes. The Sewer Commission held the first of its evening sewer policy meetings on September 13th. The meeting was taped by HCAM, and a copy of the PowerPoint presentation is available on the Sewer Department's website. A member of the Board of Health was present, as well as a representative of the property owner of South Hingham Industrial Park. The meeting was covered the background information regarding the structure of the commission and the Hingham's existing sewer districts, and also set forth goals of the policy review process. The goals include number one, consolidate existing policies into one comprehensive document. 2, to develop a detailed application process and review policy for future requests for sewer expansion projects, including addressing the role of other town boards. And 3, to develop a sewer betterment calculation policy. The Commission will be working with Mary Savage Dunham, Town Council, and other boards, particularly the Board of Health, over the next few months to develop and discuss draft policy language. And that's an overview, real quick.
That's an overview.
Yes.
Mary, do you have any comments?
I do not. Nicely done.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Any comments from the public? Okay, so that document, once it's all, the i's are dotted and the t's are crossed, will be circulated for public comment once that's...
Absolutely.
Okay, that's fine. Okay.
Well said.
You did it.
I did it.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Okay. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
Is Tim?
Yeah, Tim walked in.
There he
Tim
is.
is here.
Tim, come on up. Come on down, as they used to say.
Dwight, you ready?
Got it? Hi, all right. Good timing, Tim. I didn't see you come in. Some of you may have heard that there was an issue at the Lincoln School apartment building concerning elevator service, and it occurred twice over a period of the summer. And that building, as most of you know, is a building that is operated by the town. So Tim White, who is the chair of the Affordable Housing Group for us, has been addressing the issue and a number of other issues on what kind of technical updates or other assistance we might need to continue to provide the residents with the type of service we believe they're entitled to. So, Tim, with that as a background, if you'd be kind enough to give us an update.
Sure. At last year's town meeting, the town meeting passed a revisions to Article 39, which is the article actually created the trust here in town, providing that the trust would be reporting annually to the townspeople, and more specifically to the Board of Selectmen and the Advisory Committee in respect to the activities that we're engaging in to create affordable housing here in Hingham. As perhaps a lot of you know, that the state has requirements for communities that you need to have at least 10% of your properties to be deemed affordable, or you are subject to the 40B application developments that can be somewhat onerous on communities. So that's what we're working towards as one of our primary responsibilities as members of the trust. With the passage of the new article, we have been given some direction as to how we can better interact with both the Board of Selectmen and the Advisory Committee to make sure that everything is transparent, so you folks all have a real good understanding of what we're doing. I just came from a meeting with the town accountant, members of the Advisory Committee, and members of my trust, and we've reached I think, an agreement on how we're going to go forward in respect to reporting the financial aspects of the expenditures that we make in affordable housing. We also talked about putting together a meeting specifically to address the issue of Lincoln School, which is a separate component of what we do at the Affordable Housing Trust, is to run the Lincoln School. And the fact that we have some ongoing maintenance issues is something that, to us, was very pressing, important that we would address it and resolve as quickly as possible. Sometimes that's sort of goes against the grain when it comes to government moving forward. And when you have needs to put capital needs assessments and annual plans together that may not have the necessary monies for emergencies like this, it gives us an opportunity to play a role by obtaining funding, whether it's from the CPC or whether it's actually from our own funds that we've been able to develop in the creation of affordable housing. So that's the direction we're going to take in respect to that, and hope to address the elevator as with an application to CPC this fall, actually within the next 10 days. We also have before us a major project for us. The next major project we just completed, or pretty much completed, 80 Beale Street. If you drive down Beale Street, you can see our affordable housing project being developed by Craftsman Builders right now. It's going to be 8 units, of which 2 will be affordable. They've broken ground and moving along at a pretty good pace right now. And that will add 2 affordable units to our list here in town. So the next project we have is the Selectmen's parcel. And that's property that it's about 10 acres of land in behind 80 Beale Street that back in 2005, the town meeting voted to authorize the Board of Selectmen to have the trust develop affordable housing on that property with certain specific requirements that we need to follow. And that includes that there'd be a range of 20 to 40 units, that it would have a mix of low and moderate housing, that they'd all be owner-occupied, and some additional conditions. So to begin that project, we have retained a consultant, the group called Community Opportunities Group out of Boston, to put together requests for proposals for us. And what that will do is we'll get developers and contractors that come in, and architects and everybody to kind of give us an idea of what they envision would best suit that location within the context of the town meeting article, because that's sort of the law that we need to follow. And this is literally the first step we're taking in going forward on the Selectmen's parcel. We have used Community Opportunities Group for the Beale Street project. So we've have some experience with them. We're comfortable with them. They did a terrific job for us. We put an outstanding team together of consultants to guide us through the permitting process. So we had, and actually, I don't know if Paul was on no, I guess it's the zoning board, but Paul might have been there when we had the zoning board tell us that it was the friendliest 40B probably in the history of the state of Massachusetts that we put through on 80 Beale. And we hope to take a similar approach with the Selectmen's parcel. And we're excited about it. We are anxious to keep everybody informed about it. And that's why I'm here tonight, to let you folks know, and certainly any input at all, not just from the members of the Board of Selectmen, but from you folks as well, is appreciated. We do meet monthly. Our next meeting is on October 9th, and you're all welcome to attend the meeting, or you're more than welcome to contact me directly.
Thank you. Thank you, Tim. That was very succinct. Paul?
That was thorough, Tim. Thank you. I guess my only question would be, is there any intent of your trust to integrate what you want to build with what is being built presently down on Beale Street, so that it looks like just a seamless neighborhood, or are we not that far yet?
We're not that far yet, but what we found is when we did the request for proposals for Beale Street, that we got a wide variety of proposals from different developers. And it was terrific, because it actually, fed our own, gave us ideas from our own perspective. Certainly we'd like to see something seamless. I think that kind of almost goes without saying, Paul. As a former member of the planning board, I think it would probably be a great idea to get, maybe to walk the site with the trust. We'd love to have you do that, and get some input from that perspective.
Sure, we'll do that. Anytime. Good. Irma?
Tim, thank you. You covered a lot of ground. I saw a draft of the proposal for the review of financials. I think both teams have done a great job. Having been on advisory, and the biggest concern was the transparency of the financials. And what I saw that your team and Sue Nickerson, our town accountant, and Laura Marwell from the advisory committee was very good.
Thank you.
And I'm really looking forward to seeing what we do with Lincoln School Apartments.
Well, and we've agreed tonight to meet again on that after I get to the CPC.
Excellent.
But sometime
That's
probably in
super.
October.
I'm also pleased with what you're doing here. I'm really excited about what we might get back, and I'm hopeful that we'll have a lot of community input once we get some proposals. It'd be kind of neat to see what they come back with.
Well, it's been, when we went in on 80 Beale Street, just as a little background, the trust met with the neighbors on Beale Street before, we initially actually thought about renovating the building was there. I don't know if you remember, the building was there. It used to house a school for special needs kids. But the building was very, very run down. And in the end, it made sense to demolish it and build new structures. But when we went in with the neighbors, even before we talked to anybody, the first people we talked to, the neighbors, they couldn't wait for us to do something with that property. So that's the approach we'll be taking with the Selectmen's parcel as well, and that part of the process, as well as the financial part, will be very transparent.
A lot of work.
Let me go back to the elevator, if I may.
Sure.
That's a personal issue with me and I know it was very much with you. You're going to the CPC for funds to correct I would assume something that is a long-term solution, but it doesn't in any way impinge on the current safety and operations of the elevator that's there.
Is my understanding is it does not, but but given what you actually talked about earlier, that you had the couple incidents where it's the breakdowns and where it's not stopping at the right level, that it's enough of a concern that I think it makes sense to put that application in with CPC and let CPC consider it, rather than waiting for a capital needs to be done 2-3 years down the road.
My understanding is it's one of these analog versus digital issues. I think that's the simplest way to explain it. There is nothing structurally wrong with the elevator, but there is a better way to manage it, and that's what these funds will help to
Exactly.
correct. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. That's what I got. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Chambers, come on up front.
Thank you. My name is Al Chambers. I live at 86 Central Street, the Lincoln Apartments. I'm proud and delighted to be there. I have great neighbors. Nobody lives at Lincoln School Apartments if they don't, in addition to having financial needs, they have physical needs. The unfortunate incident with the elevator last month was a series of 12 or more breakdowns. I didn't record them all. Most of which were the elevator either not stopping at the floor level or not responding to a call, gets stuck on the floor. So there was one weekend, however, where it was brutally hot and the air conditioning was broken in the meeting room, which we consider a resource center. If it's too hot, you go to the main building center and you stay there. That same weekend, 3 people fell. And you cannot be in your 80s and not fall without getting hurt. And we had 3 separate injuries, which prompted a series of calls to the fire department. The first call went to the Lincoln School management staff. And what happened was, our first response was, well, we'll get right over there Monday. This was on a Saturday. It was sitting in the heat and with no outlook for reparation on the elevator, and they fixed that. The state inspector was in within the past week, and they have worked on it consistently and hard. The state inspector says unequivocally that this is a good elevator. There's nothing wrong with it. Structurally, it's fine. It's a little aged, goes with the age of the building. And the only difficulty occasionally is because of the age of the elevator is to get parts occasionally. But you don't want to be in a position of having elderly woman trapped in the elevator in a heat wave or falling in the elevator. It's just a terrible, terrible situation. I would further like to suggest that this property is well maintained. They do everything they can with the resources they have. It's an old building. I went to school there, believe it or not, and I live in one of my classrooms. We have a beautiful garden in the front. It should be the pride of Hingham. The Hingham Garden Club should lay claim to it. That garden is no longer accessible to the public. It has been sealed off. All the entrances closed. At one point, there was a deed restriction saying that there had to be a tot lot there so grandchildren visiting could go play in the yard in the front. And we all love it. It's a beautiful thing to look at. But it is useless, just absolutely useless as a facility unless you're happy looking at it. And what I wanted to suggest is that you look into a new wing for elderly housing because of the lapse we have with the required minimum housing for the needy. It would be a great spot for it. We can have little gardens outside the windows, and you can cure half of the problem by putting another elevator shaft in at the entrance to that. I say that to you humbly. We need the facility. We've got a 7-year waiting list, and there are a lot of people in Hingham that are absolutely needy at this point. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Al. Thank you for that suggestion, too. Okay, anyone else? Okay, Tim, anything further? No? No, that was very good, right on target, and thank you for that.
Thanks, folks.
You come back and keep us
We'll keep you
posted.
informed.
Let us know, make sure the CPC is
do
doing
that.
what they're doing. Okay. I would guess by the size of the audience that you're all here to talk about the Red Sox game tomorrow. For the benefit of the folks at home, and there was a very well-written and thoroughly documented article in the Hingham Journal that really explained an issue that has arisen as a result of a congressional decision that was made about a year and a half ago. And I just gave to my colleagues tonight an article that was in the Weekly Standard, and thank you, Army. The article starts out with a good deed undone, and how the intent was to do some things to address an issue of the National Flood Insurance Program, and people went down that road and they voted. It was one of those, given what's happening today where nobody's talking to anybody, it was one of those issues where Democrats and Republicans and independents came together to vote it through. But then, of course, what kicked in was the law of unintended consequences, and the issues of who's in and who's out of the area, what are the implications of that, and most importantly, what are the financial implications of that decision. And this article, which was in last week's magazine, then addressed all the people who sponsored the bill have now changed their position. So it is something that has obviously caught national attention, and those of you who have been reading about it know that our colleagues in Situate and Marshfield have a similar issue. So it is not, and I have had conversations with Congressman Lynch's office, and he with Congressman Keating, both are trying to make amends and join this, see what they can do to. I can tell you this, as we all know, the federal government moves slowly. We'll find out how slowly during this, the current issue that they're addressing. But I think we recognize that there's a need to address what obviously is impacting, and for the benefit of the folks at home, about 500 of the 8,000 residents' homes in the town of Hingham, a significant number. So, and it's a significant number because there were only 50 homes in the floodplain before, and now, because of a change, a technical change, that number has increased to about 500. So it's obviously has caught our attention and others. And it's unique for the town, I have to point this out, we're trying to help sections of the town and keeping that in balance with the other needs of the town. So we recognize there's a role for us to play, and we also recognize there's a role for the residents to play. So we'll see how we can coordinate our efforts. Over the last few weeks, the town administrator has had a number of discussions with folks in the know, both here and in Washington, and I would like to turn it over to Ted if he could maybe highlight initially what it is we're trying to do, and then I'll open it up for questions after that. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think you stated it very well, and I think succinctly when we say that the federal government's flood program is in serious trouble, and their attempt to fix it is to draw the lines back and capture more people in the floodplain to pay more of the costs and spread it around. Our issue as we begin to look at this is that, and I want to start out by saying that we started building on the work of Otto Harling, who is going to give a brief presentation after we walk through some of the steps that we're working on. But we're going to challenge the data, challenge the maps, and begin working on a community rating system program to help reduce some of the premiums. The folks here in Town Hall that are working on it are our planning team, and I'd like to have them come on up and introduce them, and then let Otto make a brief presentation on what he's been working on. Okay. one more chair, correct? Mike, could you bring one with you? Thanks. We have our Community Planning Director, Mary Savage Dunham. We have our Zoning Administrator, Emily Wentworth, and we have Abby Pearsall, our Conservation Agent, and we have Michael Clancy, our Building Inspector, Building Commissioner. And so they're really going to be spearheading this endeavor. We're getting a lot of calls from residents looking for help. I'm getting 2 or 3 emails a day. I've responded to many of you. The Conservation Office will be your point of contact if you need things like, am I on the flood? The question we're asked regularly is, am I in the flood map plane now or am I not? So Abby is working with our GIS system to be able to identify that, and we're discussing, how we're going to begin communicating with that population to make sure they're aware of what's happening and what we can do to help, and to some extent what we can't do to help. Partly, there are certain steps that they have to take. We can help, but we can't take that step for the resident. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mary.
Thank you. I'd like to provide some brief background just for everyone watching at home that may not be as familiar. Our conversation tonight about the concerns about the flood mapping and the changes made to it really has 2 distinct but related parts. We have our new FEMA flood maps, which were adopted in July of 2012. Before that, they were last updated in 1986. Between the 2 updates, there was some fairly dramatic changes. Currently, the federal government is in the process of changing the flood insurance rates. Part of that is because FEMA is having some financial difficulties, and they're modifying how they basically tax people for living in hazardous areas. As a result of the map modernization effort, people that were never in a floodplain before are now getting notices saying, I'm sorry, you need to have flood insurance, and that flood insurance can be very expensive. And some people who were in flood zones already, that's not a surprise. With the new maps, you may be in a different hazard level. So your flood insurance rate may have been at one base level, and just by merit of the new mapping, all of a sudden the government's saying you're at a higher risk, and therefore as a result your insurance may cost more. Compounding that problem is dramatic changes to the overall insurance rates being put forth by the federal government. Right now, the rates are anticipated to increase from 16% to 25% for homeowners, and in some cases even more. And that's fairly dramatic. If you have a insurance rate increase and then also you're in a higher hazard level, it's a double whammy for people that aren't expecting it. So those are the 2 main issues that we're looking at, and as we review those issues, we're taking a look at the impact on the residents and the community. So to reiterate, our 2 broad areas of concern are the enlargement and changes to the regulated floodplain areas, as well as the rising flood insurance rates and the associated impacts on the residents and our businesses within town. In response to these concerns, we prepared a list of possible action steps for your consideration, and I do have some copies here if we'd like to pass them around. I do want to give a disclaimer. There's so many unique situations between the flood insurance maps and the rates and just everybody's personal situation. There's not really a one-size-fits-all answer. So there's really more of a range of options, and there may be a different combination that helps everybody in a slightly different manner. And we don't know exactly what the answer is for a particular person until perhaps we study it a little bit closer. So the action steps that we've identified as having the most viability are, first of all, to challenge the data that's been put forth. Now, there's 2 ways to challenge the mapping data. One way to challenge it is to go forward with a letter of map revision. We'll hear more about that by Mr. Harling later, but essentially that's when you do your own modeling to disprove what FEMA has accepted as the lay of the land, literally. And in looking at the new maps, which we do have here, there are some areas of town that have fairly dramatic changes, and those may be areas where there is a fair likelihood of success in actually having that model revised. And by having the model revised, what I mean is the line may move. some people that are now shown to be in may not be, or if you're in a high hazard zone, the change may just result that you're in a lower hazard zone. We haven't investigated it that thoroughly. Another way to challenge the data is a letter of map amendment, and that is done by the individual homeowner working with the assistance of staff, and that is essentially where you're saying to FEMA, I know a portion of my property may be subject to flooding, but my house, by merit of its construction or elevation, should not have to have flood insurance. And there's as with any government, there's a fair amount of paperwork that you have to submit, and you wait 6 to 8 weeks, and you may get a letter back from the government saying, we agree with you, your property may flood, but your structure is high enough, you do not need flood insurance. That's a very individualized process, and we'd have to look at your property in particular to tell you if that's appropriate for you. So we have those two options. We've been discussing if the town would entertain negotiating with vendors for a group rate for elevation certificates. We haven't discussed it in depth, but in order to apply for a letter of map amendment, residents need to have an elevation certificate. Those can cost between $300 and $1,000.
Let me just interject for a second. We have a proposal. We just got it today, so I'm not going to present it for you tonight, but I will at your next meeting next Thursday for you to consider, along with what Mary just said, 2 cost components. One, to study the data of how the oceans move and the flood areas might move, and the elevation issue, and bring you cost proposals for you to consider whether you'd want to appropriate funds for that. But we're not prepared to do that tonight.
So other actions that staff anticipates taking to help navigate this matter are to move forward and clearly identify what properties are in flood zones now that were not in 1986. And it's a fairly sizable amount. And given the discrepancy in the quality of data from 1986 to now, it's easier said than done, but we certainly can do it. We're in the process of providing additional information for the public's use, both on our conservation website, and our conservation website has a link to FEMA, but with the government shutdown, that may not be working. We're not certain. We have hard copies of the FEMA maps in our office.
Federal government shutdown.
Federal.
We're here.
So we have hard copies of the maps in our office in the Conservation Department and in the Building Department if you'd like to come in and see them. And we have a bulletin board on the 2nd floor in the public hallway that we're going to put information on for folks if you may not have computer access at home and you'd like to come in and peruse our information. We'll be putting information up there as well. If you'd like to have a conversation about your individual situation, we'd encourage you to call the Conservation Department, and they are at 781-741-1444, and 1445, I'm sorry. And what we would like to do is make an appointment for you to come in, because due to the sheer volume of calls that we're getting, we want to be sure that staff is accessible to give you the time that you need to have. So back to our other action steps. As Mr. Alexiadis mentioned, we're looking at joining the Community Rating System program. And essentially what that is it's akin to a community block grant consolidated plan. It's a town-wide plan that the community documents all the steps that we're taking within the town to lower or mitigate your risk for flooding. And for every action that we take, whether it's a regulation or a public outreach or seminars, the town earns certain points. And depending on the number of points that we get, we qualify for a town-wide reduction in flood insurance rates. They offer between a 5% and 45% reduction in premiums. I will tell you 45% is not likely. In the 10 to 15% range is typical. However, we're just beginning the process of trying to calculate where we think we would fall. So we're working on that, and that's a sizable work program, but in conjunction with that, we'll be applying for a CIC challenge grant with Hull and other towns to see if we can work collaboratively on this. And we do have I'd like to just close. I know I went through a lot of information very quickly, but We do have also another document here with some frequently asked questions that will be on our website within a week, and it will be on the bulletin board. We'll hand it out here tonight, and we're certainly available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mary. Thanks very much. Is Otto?
Right there. Right
Right.
front and center.
There he is. I saw you earlier today. Would you like to make some comments on,
Yes, I have a 10-minute presentation I'd like to make.
please come on up, and I'll ask, we'll let you sit right up here, if my colleagues wouldn't mind.
Okay, I'm Otto Harling from 212 Otis Street, and I'm speaking primarily in behalf of the Walton Cove Coalition of approximately 50 homeowners. That's an area between Otis Street and Downer Street on Crow Point. And it's a combination of somewhat expensive houses and a lot of starter housing stock. One of the few areas that are left in the whole town for starter housing. I'm going to briefly cover these items. The new flood map, very briefly, because there's an awful lot of complexity here. 10 minutes just scratches the surface. I'm going to give our town leaders and administrator a very rough estimate of what the financial impact might be to the town on the tax base. Then I'm going to focus, and this is where most of my emphasis is, on the Walton Cove area, the tax map, which is useful for showing where the 1986 and the 2012 flood zones are and what they cover. And then I'm going to give just a little information about the impact to homeowners in the Walton Cove area. And finally, I'm going to request assistance, if it is available, if the town fathers decide to assist the 500 or so homeowners, property owners in the town, then the Walton Cove Coalition would like to share in that assistance. First, and this is very important, knowledge about the impact of the 2012 flood map came to everybody, including myself and everybody else I've talked to, when they got a letter from the bank saying that they had to pay flood insurance. We were all blindsided at every level of the town, certainly me included. And that doesn't mean anybody dropped the ball and didn't get the legal notices out and all that. But we were really shocked once we got these notices. And then I and my good friend and colleague, also with an engineering and technical background, Bill Carnes, decided to dig into this more. And we were appalled after we dug through the first few layers to find out that this is not a matter of a few $100 a year. The interim rates that we are given are a couple of $100 a year from the National Flood Insurance. But the eventual rates that will kick in under the standard flood insurance program as it's now envisioned, that will start kicking in for primary homeowners next October 1st, and which have kicked in already for business owners and for second house owners this October 1st. They are draconian. They go up to $50,000, $60,000 from a couple of $100. On our property, we started with $420 the first year. We're now up to $450 or something like that. But when the provisions of the Bigot Water Act kick in and the standard rates start kicking in, for primary homeowners, you will see an increase of 20% per year for 5 years until you reach what FEMA calls its actuarial rates. And in many cases, there will be, in our neighborhood, $40,000, $50,000, and more $1,000 per year for $250,000 maximum insurance. Wonderful business to be in. I wish I had gotten into that rather than science. Okay. So as I said, the more Bill Carnes and I looked at this, the more we learned, the worse it looked to us. I'm going to show you a little bit for our area, with a focus on the Walton Cove area, what we've discovered. Okay, there should be a map here. Before that, I threw this slide in. If there are approximately 500 properties, as we believe, in Hingham that are in the flood zone, and just for the sake of an estimate, back of the envelope estimate, if their average tax value is $800,000, and if you use the tax rate of 2.5% per year, their value, if they're going to be in the high-risk flood zones, is going to be decreased significantly. Let's say somewhere between 10 and 40%. This decreases the town's tax revenue by $1 to $4 million per year, using the 2.5% per year tax rate. But that's not all of it. There are major losses from people and companies moving out of the flood zone to get away from it. I wonder what that'll do to our downtown. Okay, now let's focus on my neighborhood and the problem of the Walton Cove neighbors. This is a tax map showing all the houses in this area. It's not geographically as great as some of the other maps, but it shows, and I've drawn on this, the 1986 firm in a blue line. And notice that there are only about 8 houses, in fact, exactly 8 houses, that were in that flood zone, the 1986 flood zone. Now, the interesting thing is that residents of the Walton Cove area who have lived there for 55 years have never seen any flooding that exceeded the 1986 flood map. And I've talked to a number of ocean engineers who know much more about it than I do, and they've assured me that the 1986 flood map is very accurate. So you can draw your own conclusions. Why do we have a new flood map that has this flood zone here that sweeps another 32 houses into the flood zone? So there are now 50 houses in the flood zone in this area. Furthermore, it's even worse than that. The initial flood zone here, most of these people live in a very sheltered cove area called Walton Cove. You know, it's about 3 feet deep at high tide, and there's never been a wave observed on that, on that cove. And then there's 2 or 3 houses that face our very sheltered harbor, where old-time residents have assured me they've never seen a wave in excess of 3 feet. When they did the modeling, of course, they didn't have enough money. They never do. So they didn't model the wave run-up in the area close to Walton Cove. They modeled it some distance away where the topography, the contours of the land are very different. Ocean engineers have assured me that that makes a hell of a big difference. Where they modeled it, there is a cliff of about 20 feet high. That gave them a result, and it's shown here on this map, which is their map, of 22 feet maximum base flood elevation. Wind-driven surge. Well, they extrapolated that rather crudely to include everything in here in this red zone, and it's now VE 22 feet. And that's where the very high rates come from. If you're, for example, 10 or 12 feet below the base flood elevation in a VE zone, you're looking at 50 or 60 grand per year. Even if you're 1 foot below base flood elevation, you're looking at several $1,000s. Even if you're above it by 1 foot and you have a mortgage. And by the way, keep in mind, the only people that are forced to pay this are the people that have mortgages, which by and large are ultimately insured by the federal government. And the banks are forced by federal law to get flood insurance from anybody that has a mortgage that's basically federally insured. That's the way they got you. Now, there are many other things I could tell you about this, but those are important basic facts for you to keep in mind. I've already said this to you. There was 6 houses in our neighborhood that were in an A 12-foot zone, and 2 were in an A and a V 14-foot zone. There are now 50 homes in a V 22-foot zone. Bill Carnes and I, after we studied this and we talked to ocean engineering experts, we decided this is just incorrect. The modeling wasn't done right. The flood map is not correct. So we have started an effort to change the map. This is called a letter of map revision. We've taken the first steps, just the 2 of us, to hire a coastal ocean engineering firm. It's a Hingham-based firm, and we interviewed a number of firms. We decided this one had the best potential for solving this problem with us. And Ted knows the firm, and he's also going to talk to these people. And we have gotten to the first step where the firm and its engineers reviewed what the FEMA people did. And by the way, they had a lot of trouble getting the information, which is typical of this whole business. That's why people don't know what's going on. It's like being stuck in a bathtub and the temperature being ratcheted up slowly until you're parboiled.
I have that picture.
Anyway, our ocean engineering firm has concluded that, in fact, we have a good case for our area that the map is inaccurate. And if it's inaccurate in the Walton Cove area, it's likely to be inaccurate elsewhere. I've been reading quite a bit about what's going on in the United States. There's a place in Bricktown, New Jersey, a large area, where I don't know how many hundreds of people have been taken out of the flood zone because they found that the map was inaccurate. And they put the screws on FEMA, one way or another, and they got it changed. So, bottom line is for Walton Cove, and I don't speak to any other area because we've studied that, the historical evidence does not agree with what the model that they have recently produced for our shoreline predicts. And if you do modeling, you have to benchmark it based on the data, the actual facts. And the model for our area, because I think they've extrapolated too crudely, does not agree with what they have calculated, or what they've extrapolated, because they have never calculated directly for our area. So we are looking at, we're looking at a number of homes that will be in this range per year when the standard rates kick in a few years, for $250,000 a year insurance, and for a 1% chance per year that the event will happen. Now, generally speaking, if you read the newspapers, you get the idea that FEMA's in a hole, that they're operating at a big deficit due to the National Flood Insurance Program. That's not true. The National Flood Insurance Program, which is a program operated by FEMA, is actually in the black by $6.2 billion. So there must be other activities, like the giveaways that FEMA has been doing, where they give away money to people who have been affected by disasters. My own son profited from that. He didn't have flood insurance, but when there was an unusual flooding incident in his neighborhood in Durham, New Hampshire, the FEMA guy came and wrote him a check. I have neighbors not too far away who have lived near the lighthouse in Scituate. They didn't have flood insurance. They had repeated flooding. They got a check each time. Maybe that's why they're in the red. Now, why are they looking to the people that have mortgages that they've got to hold on to pay for that? It may be good public policy to pay for the disasters of people that don't have flood insurance or disaster insurance. But that should be something that Congress decides on. FEMA shouldn't be squeezing the people who happen to have mortgages that they've got a legal hold on. So in summary, Walton Cove residents are looking at rather draconian increases, or for the first time ever, most of them 32 out of the 50, flood insurance premiums. Many of these people can't sustain this. They're going to lose their homes. They're going to move away. And the 50 property owners that I'm representing today, and I hope I'm doing it properly, would like to ask the town, if you do in fact decide to assist people in this town, that we be part of the group that you assist. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Otto. That was very good. People may be asking, why would we get involved in this? And I think there was a slide that Otto put up there where he talked about the tax impact on the town from just the Walton Cove area. But what we have to consider is that, as you know how we do budgeting in this town, we're restrained in what we can and cannot do. And if it goes down because of some either man-made or artificial event, and the tax revenue in one location goes down, by practice, that means it goes up everywhere else. So the interest of the town is, while we understand why the federal government is wanting to do this, we want to make sure that it's right. And I'm reminded, I don't want to criticize the government. They've got enough people doing that these days. But I saw a show the other night that talked about my old office building that happened to be in downtown Manhattan, where I worked, and they shared the Hurricane Sandy impact on that. That area never flooded, but it did last year. And I'm sure as many areas we worried about that in this town when Sandy was coming. So there are technical reasons, as Otto has explained, how these things happen, but what is the real impact? And I think the story, when I moved here, I recognized I was a mile from the shore, so I called my insurance company and I said, do I need flood insurance? And he said, if your house is flooded, Hingham is gone. So I said, I don't need flood insurance. But it is a very serious issue, and particularly for a coastal community, that it is something that when we do it, it's done, as was explained, across a technical area done by people who well-intended but don't have all the information. And what we want to make sure of is that the information that is here is accurate and satisfactory, not only for those who are impacted, but for all others, because they will also be impacted. So I don't know what the costs are. You've seen the options we are exploring. Obviously, this is going to be a continuing discussion. We've had discussions with Washington, and I've asked the town administrator to get a letter for the 3 selectmen to send to our congressman to encourage them to expedite what Maxine Walters, whom I don't ever agree with, but Maxine Walters is raising the flag. So I think it's worthy that we pursue that and join the forces to make sure that the technical data that they're using is correct. I shared with Ted a story. My wife and I were out in our boat one day, and Noah told us it's sunny and bright at the mouth of the Cape Cod Canal. My wife Susan had her life jacket on as the water was coming in over the bow, and I said, this is Noah. They're right where they are, but not here. They didn't take the standard here. So I can agree with the observation that let's be sure that the data they're giving us is correct. So I'd like to open it for other comments. We're not going to decide anything tonight. Obviously, we haven't heard all of the information, and I think Mary and the team are going to look at making sure we get that. I'll ask my colleagues first. Paul, if you have any further comments you'd like to make, and Irma likewise.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm probably going to call the Conservation Commission and see if my house falls within that. So, I mean, everybody's got an interest in trying to figure this out. You don't necessarily need to be a Walton Cove resident, so we'll get it done.
Okay, thank you. Irma?
Several things. We haven't mentioned Senator Bob Hemlin yet. And at the urging of someone in this room, who shall remain nameless, but she's married to Otto, he got very involved, and there were hearings being held by Congress, and the only people that were testifying were from Louisiana. And Bob had Elizabeth Warren go, and I guess she got a cram course on the FEMA flood maps, but she was able to testify, and I think this is part of what Otto and Bill Carnes, who also, all of you deserve a big thank you. The modeling was not done properly for those of us that learned that in college, that you certainly can't model New England if you're looking at Louisiana. They start at, what, 0 sea level and go down. So it really is apples and oranges. The other thing, I want to thank Sarah Curtin for telling her story in the Journal about, and that's, Sarah's story, I think, is not atypical. I think her story is very typical of what's going on. And for me, this is important for actually 3 main reasons. We think of Crow Point as more expensive houses, and we thank all those people for giving us their tax dollars every year. But it is the one of the very last places that we have a large number of affordable houses in Hingham. And people really don't realize that unless you drive around or have good friends like Sarah to see her absolutely gorgeous little house. And she does. Her house is absolutely gorgeous, and I love it. But we need to preserve that affordability, and we need to help however we can here. The second thing is, and thanks to Abby for dragging out the flood maps and answering my many, many questions. As we move to do harbor development, we want to make the harbor more accessible for people. We want to bring business into the harbor area. We also want to encourage business at North Street. It's a little tough to say, welcome to Hingham, by the way, we want your business, but it's going to cost you $10,000 a year in flood insurance, never mind property taxes and everything else. So I think that we have a very, very sincere interest in that. And then the whole issue of the devaluation of the property, which may not take place for a couple years, but our budget is not declining. And that devaluation is going to have a serious impact across everybody in Hingham. So yes, onward and upward, and I'm looking forward to what Ted is going to share with us next week for the proposal.
Just to link this area to the rest of the town, because I've heard a couple comments about tax policy. The way, and Chairman Ruffa, you alluded to this, but I want to be crystal clear for everybody. The tax system in the state of Massachusetts for property taxes is set up as somewhat of a zero-sum game. The total town is valued. And if individual properties increase in value that have already been here, then the tax rate goes down and other people are affected more positively. And the reverse happens the other way. So if homes within this area lost a significant value, if homes within the entire harbor area lost 20% of their value, for example, that value would drive the tax rate up for everybody else in town. Okay. And so the town wouldn't actually lose any dollars. It's one of the nuances of the tax system, but the shift would be substantial to the other taxpayers in town. So I know I've heard a little bit about, folks might live in South Hingham, this might not affect them as much. It's going to affect everybody in town. There's just no way about it, let alone all of the other issues that you raised, Irma, about business development, harbor, and the government's, the town of Hingham's properties that are within these areas.
Before we let Otto and Bill Carnes go, could you tell the people the two main websites that are chock-a-blocked? Our site is great too, but there are two other websites that I've been reading for hours and I'm going cross-eyed, but they have tremendous amounts of information on them. One of them is what, Stop FEMA Now?
Yes, Stop FEMA Now, which is based in the Point Pleasant area of New Jersey. George Casimos is ramrodding that. He's got thousands of people in his coalition. And then the Chamber of Commerce in New Orleans, well-funded effort, putting all the parishes together and behind us, are taking a leadership role.
And then the one here, the Marshfield.
Yes, the Coastal Coalition, Marshfield, the Coastal Coalition for Situate.
That's a really good one because that has area specific. And we, of course, touch on all those areas. So all of those are really good websites. I hadn't gone to the New Orleans one yet.
Now, the Marshfield and Situate people have the advantage that there was a bit of publicity out due to things that happened here and elsewhere. And so by the time they were faced with having to accept the new FEMA flood maps, they were clued in and they immediately started to fight it.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Irma. Thank you, Otto. Obviously, we're going to be talking about this at future sessions. There's clearly more information that we have to get. We have to explore the options. We have to see what Washington and the state do. And then we'll be chatting about that as well. But I would be happy to entertain a few questions if there's an issue that we missed. Martha.
Martha, could you come up? They can't hear you. They can't hear you through the mic unless you speak to the microphones at home.
Hi, I'm Martha Buick of Otis Hill Road. I do have a question that came out of the folks from North Street area, and that is that one way to be above the base flood elevation is to raise your house, and one person, it was suggested, could raise his house by 15 feet. That's the Lincoln National Historic District. So my question for those who are working on these issues might be to inquire as to whether houses that have been around for 250 years or so and in a historic district can have some sort of exemption from the program. I don't know what the answer is, but I think it's an interesting question.
Good question.
Thanks.
Good question, Martha. Thank you. Okay. Mr. Chambers?
Thank you. Al Chambers, 86 Central Street. We all live in a flood zone. Any town, any city, anywhere that has riparian rights, whether it's the river or the town brook, or whether you're at the base of the Colorado Rockies, or whether you're in the Midwest in Texas and all of a sudden you're getting flooded out, have a flood insurance problem. So Ted's comments are right exactly on line. If you live at Mast Hill Road, you've got a flood map problem, and you will see more of it. I'm not sure that we'll get anywhere with redrawing or trying to redraft flood maps, because you're going to get requests all over the country for this. And FEMA is in trouble with the national government. They have grossly overspent, and Congress feels they are owed money by FEMA, which in fact only responded to requests for aid in tornadoes and blizzards and floods and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Very politically driven. Now they're demanding to be, Congress is demanding to be paid back. If we send our very good senator and our very good Representative Garrett Bradley to DC to try to discuss this problem, it's going to be sending Little Red Riding Hood right to the Wolf's Cave to ask for more food. It's just not going to happen in the long run. And as you may have noticed, our government shut down because of a $17 trillion deficit. Very serious problem. I suspect the answer for us will be right here. And the reason I say that is because we've got very good local state banks who have held on through a very difficult recession. And I would suspect looking into a task force, state level generated, to have state chartered banks, Hingham Institution for Savings and Mayflower Cooperative, et cetera, federal savings and loans, that do not sell their mortgages. Have them rewrite properties that are in difficulty right now as a task force. And I think that would get people out of the clutches of the FEMA problem that we're facing. That's my suggestion.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Al. Okay. So we have homework to do, obviously. I don't know what the schedule for all of that will be. I think we want to get the facts right and the costs estimated properly. But clearly, we'll be back to discuss this further at our future meetings. And I want to thank you all for coming out this evening to bring this issue the support that it readily and rightly deserves. So I thank you for that, and I thank the staff for giving up their evening to come here as well.
And also for putting together the list of choices really very quickly.
Very
You all reacted very, very quickly, but it's
good.
very comprehensive. It's good.
Okay, we have other items to discuss. You're all welcome to stay, but I know what usually happens, so
Thank you, guys.
thank you. Thanks very much. We'll take just a minute, Bob, to let the room. I could ask you if you could vacate the room quickly. We'd appreciate it.
Just
Could I ask you to vacate the room, please? That's right.
They can stay, really.
Oh, yeah. Okay. We have some votes. We have some votes to take. Mr. Healy, if you would.
I'll move to approve the issuance of a special one-day all-alcoholic beverages liquor license to Julie Chelsea for the South School Fall Festival at Old Derby Academy, 34 Main Street, on Saturday, November 2nd, 2013, from 7:30 p.m. to 12:30 a.m.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Irma?
I move to approve the issuance of a special one-day all-alcoholic beverages liquor license to Hingham Community Center in care of Virginia M. Walsh for the 2014 Cabaret Annual Fundraiser at the Hingham Armory, 96 Central Street, on January 30th, 31st, and February 1st, 2014, from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we have some votes and appointments. Let's see, whose turn?
I'll move to appoint Margaret Coleman to the Beautification Commission for a 3-year term ending 2016.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Irma?
Move to reappoint Eric Connerly to the Cable TV Advisory Committee for a 3-year term ending in 2016.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, there was one other appointment that didn't make it on the proposed
Yes.
list. Do you have that?
Yeah, I do. It's Irma?
What?
Yeah, would you,
Sure.
to appoint?
I move to appoint Brian Nees to the Noise Bylaw Study Committee.
Second.
And that would round out that committee.
That will round out that committee, and now there are 5 members, and I'll ask Betty I'll talk with you about how we get that started, okay? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Ted, we have been circulating an animal policy, and I think you brought an issue to my attention today, and I just want to clarify it. It has to do with service animals and their training. And maybe you could explain to the folks at home that issue for...
A question was raised about service animals and whether or not the training of them would involve bringing them into the building. And under the statute that the regulation we're proposing here, that wouldn't be allowed. Service animals would be allowed in the building, but they have to have their certification as a service animal before they come in here. Other than that, the policy does allow for an exemption for animals attending a training program in the Recreation Commission, which is separate from some parts of training for service animals involve them going in public. And so that wouldn't be included in that. And then, of course, canine dogs under law enforcement.
Okay.
And the only 2 questions, and I'll ask it for the TV, I had asked the town administrator yesterday, did Chief Perrano sign off on this? And did the Recreation Commission?
No, I did not discuss it with the Recreation Commission.
Okay.
But I provided them an exemption for...
They raised
Okay.
the
issue, not formally, but I had spoken to one commissioner who said that they do this work, training.
Well,
they
it
have
was
dog
in the
training.
brochure.
Yeah.
That just went
So,
out.
I mean, very easy. Item 2, animals attending a training program conducted by the Town of Hingham Recreation Commission are exempt.
That are exempt. Okay. Okay, that being the question, let's see, your turn?
No.
But is it-
I'll move to adopt an animal policy for the town hall consistent with the regulations attached here, too.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And Irma, do you want to declare?
Oh, my.
You don't have to read it.
I don't know. Oh, thank you.
I don't think so.
Thank you. Move to declare October 24th, 2013 as United Nations Day.
Mr. Healy?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Selectmen reports, Town Administrator, is there anything you need to?
I've updated you on everything.
Okay. There have been two unique committees that I have been involved in, and I just want to update my colleagues on them. One is we've had a tax classification study committee that has been formed with the in conjunction with the Board of Assessors to evaluate whether or not Hingham should separate its tax rate between the resident and commercial, industrial, and personal property. Should they be two separate rates as opposed to what we have today? There will be a formal report coming with that, but I'll give the example that that perhaps it tells the answer to the question. Our current revenue from those two components, resident provides about 90% of the revenue, and commercial, industrial, and personal property provides about 10%. Therefore, the way the math works is that if we separated the tax rates, we would have to increase commercial, industrial, and personal property by $9 in the rate to get $1 worth of tax relief to the residential. So clearly, the math from the analysis doesn't work, and we've had some discussions with the business community as well with a number of residents. There's another couple of meetings, but I suspect the one outstanding issue will be are there any other amendments to the tax policy that we could think of, and at the moment we have some we're exploring, but nothing of a consequence. So we will be having a meeting with the assessors as we annually do in November to that issue. The other question that came up was I am on the part of the Fire Asset Study Committee, and that is a group that is ongoing in its work, and they have started to come to some conclusions, and I'll wait till they have an opportunity to formalize them, but it has to do with two questions. What kind of equipment do we need, and when should we buy it? And the second question is, are the firehouses in the right locations? Or do we need a fourth one or not? So that is progressing, and those meetings are ongoing. So, Irma, anything to report?
Well, Tim White did the housing report. Very capably and very succinctly. Also, for people wanting to put in for CPC money, the deadline is coming up rather quickly, and projects are starting to flow in. In fact, I think we got like 6 of them today in the email. So anybody that's really interested in money from the CPC, you don't have much time. So get the applications in.
Okay, thank you. Paul?
My comments are more personal in nature. However, I think they have a place here. I'd like to extend a congratulations to Brian and Kate McPherson, and a well done to their son, First Lieutenant William McPherson, United States Marine Corps. I went to school with Kate and Brian and learned recently that their son had just returned from a tour of duty in Afghanistan, so I was very happy to see that.
That's nice. Good comment.
I'd like to extend a congratulation to my nephew and his wife, Jeremiah and Jennifer Sullivan. Just had a little baby boy. My nephew's a police officer with the Hingham Police. And I remember well when my children were born, when I was on the job. It's a pretty pleasing moment. And finally, just as a tribute to the Hingham Public School System, I'd like to extend a congratulations to Rosamond Conroy. She just successfully passed her examinations and was awarded a PhD by the University of Cambridge in England. Graduated from Hingham High. I don't know my daughter's date of graduation, I'm sorry, but it was a long journey, so well done, Rosamond.
Very nice, congratulations. Okay. Betty, anything else? No? Okay, Ted, we're up to speed. All right, I recommend that the board enter into executive session for purpose of discussing strategy with regard to real estate negotiations for 3 Otis Street, because to do so in open session may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the town, and secondly, to consider the discipline or dismissal of, or to hear complaints or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual. The board will not resume open session this evening. So, Mr. Healy?
Second that.
Okay, aye?
Aye.
An aye?
Aye.
Aye, and Mr. Rebuffo, aye. And with that all, good luck to the Red Sox tomorrow, and the Pats are surprising everybody. Have a good weekend.